Ever hopped into one of those teleportation machines?
Teleportation machines.
Yeah, not the Star Trek kind. I'm talking about one that scans you, like atom by atom. It disassembles the original you and then recreates a perfect copy on, say, Mars.
Okay, yeah.
Would you do it? It's kind of a mind bender, isn't it?
Yeah, it really makes you think about what does it even mean to be conscious and what makes you you?
And that is a perfect lead-in to today's deep dive.
Perfect.
We are tackling the really mind-bending world of Roger Penrose,
Oh, fantastic.
the physicist and mathematician who says our brains are capable of things far beyond, like way beyond what any computer could ever achieve.
Yeah.
And to help us on this intellectual adventure, our Sherpa is Scott Aaronson,
Oh, great choice.
who is a giant in the world of computer science and I would say a playful skeptic of some of Penrose's ideas.
Yeah, and Aronson's analysis is great because he really gets into the nitty-gritty of Penrose's arguments. He, dissects them.
Yeah, yeah.
But with this blend of respect and then also like healthy skepticism.
Yeah, and a lot of humor, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so Penrose's core claim,
Mm-hmm.
he believes that human consciousness can grasp mathematical truths that are completely inaccessible to even the most powerful computers.
Right.
And he uses Gödel's incompleteness theorem to illustrate this,
Yeah.
which, that's a mouthful.
It is, yeah.
But how would you explain that?
So imagine you've got like a formal system. Think, basic rules of arithmetic or something. What Gödel proved is that inside any system like that, any formal system, there are always going to be true statements, true mathematical statements that you can't actually prove using the rules of that system.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of like trying to describe a color that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
You don't have the tools for it.
So it's kind of like if a fish was trying to understand what water is.
Yeah, yeah.
It just is, right?
Right.
All around them.
It's exactly.
But Penrose, he takes this idea even further.
He does, yeah.
He gives us this specific sentence, and it's called G. Basically what it says is, this sentence can't be proven within this formal system.
Okay.
So it's like this self-referential brain teaser.
Right.
And Penrose's point is that we can see that GF is true, even if a computer stuck inside the rules of that system never could.
Right. And so he uses this to suggest that our minds have some kind of intuitive grasp of truth that goes beyond just, mechanically shuffling symbols, which is basically what he thinks computers are doing.
Right.
But, Aaronson points out that it's not quite that simple.
Of course not.
He says that seeing the truth of GF, it's not really about understanding this one sentence. It's about grasping the consistency of the entire system.
Okay.
Think of it like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
Seeing one piece doesn't tell you whether the whole picture makes sense. You've got to see how all the pieces fit together.
So it's not about spotting just a single truth. It's about understanding the entire logic behind it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But then how on earth do you actually see the consistency of something as complex as like ZF set theory? Can you just look at it and be like, yep, that all tracks. I get it.
Right, and that is the million-dollar question, right? And Aaronson, being a skeptic, he reminds us that throughout history, how many times mathematicians have thought, "Oh yeah, this system, it's rock solid, it's consistent," and then boom, someone finds a contradiction.
Wow.
So it turns out even the most brilliant minds, they make mistakes, especially when you're dealing with these really abstract concepts that are kind of at the edge of human understanding.
So even the smartest mathematicians, they can be fooled.
They can be fooled.
It makes you wonder about the whole idea of certainty in math, right?
It does, yeah.
But okay, so if our ability to work with these really complex systems doesn't set us apart from computers, then what does?
Right.
Penrose has another idea. He calls it asymmetry of understanding.
Okay, yeah.
So tell us about that.
So his argument is basically, we can look at a computer program, right? And at least in principle, we can understand exactly how it works. Every single line of code, every instruction, it's all right there.
It's all laid bare.
But when it comes to the human brain, we're still pretty much in the dark.
It's like we're trying to understand a smartphone by just staring at the pixels on the screen.
Exactly.
And you can kind of guess what's going on, but all that really amazing stuff, the code, the hardware, it's all hidden.
Right. And this is where Penrose sets up his next thought experiment. He asks us to imagine a sentence, call it SM, and what this sentence says is, machine M will never output this sentence. Okay. So if it outputs that sentence, well, then it contradicts itself.
Right.
But if it doesn't output the sentence, then it seems like it's missing a true statement.
Yeah.
So it's this really clever way to illustrate the limits of these formal systems. But here's the thing. We can only play this game with machines because we know how they work on the inside.
Right.
Can we do the same thing with humans?
So are you saying, are we stuck here because we don't know if the brain can be perfectly, like, formalized and understood, like computer code?
That's exactly right. And that's like a huge open question, right?
Right.
And that's where Penrose makes this really interesting leap.
Okay. He says because we can't rule out the possibility that our brains are doing something fundamentally different, something beyond any algorithm, they must be non-computable.
Non-computable brains.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, it's exciting, but also kind of terrifying.
It is.
Okay. But before we spiral into an existential crisis, we should probably unpack what non-computable even means, right?
Absolutely.
So non-computable. I gotta say, the first thing that pops into my head is something even weirder than quantum computers. We talking about supernatural stuff here. Well, it's funny you should say that because a lot of people jump to that conclusion. But Penrose is pretty careful to say no, I'm not talking about anything mystical. He's not saying that brains operate outside of the laws of physics or that we've got some kind of magical powers. His argument is a lot more subtle than that.
Okay.
And to really understand it, we kind of have to go a little deeper into this whole computability versus complexity thing.
Okay, so computable, I think I get, right? Like a computer could theoretically handle it even if it takes a billion years.
Right.
But what are we talking about when we say complexity?
Okay, so think about it this way. Imagine trying to have a real conversation with someone, but you're using this giant lookup table.
A lookup table. Okay.
And for every possible question, every statement someone could throw at you, you've got a pre-written response all ready to go.
Okay.
So theoretically, if you had a big enough lookup table, you could have a conversation about anything.
So what you're saying, my entire personality, all my hopes and dreams, even my anxieties, it could all be boiled down to some cosmic fortune cookie.
Well, yeah, in a way.
It's kind of depressing when you put it like that.
It's a little depressing, and also it's completely impractical.
Yeah.
Because the lookup table, to represent even one person's potential interactions, that thing would have to be insanely huge. Bigger than the observable universe kind of huge.
Okay, so maybe my brain is safe from being a fortune cookie. But I'm still not quite seeing how this all connects back to, what Penrose is saying.
So the key point here is that simulating something and actually understanding something, those are two totally different things.
Okay.
A computer could use this ridiculous lookup table and, mimic a conversation with you, sure.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't really be thinking anything.
Right.
It wouldn't actually be experiencing those things and responding in a way that was, meaningful like we do.
So are we back to this idea of understanding being the real difference maker here? But it's so interesting, right? Because as humans, we can usually tell pretty quickly if we're interacting with something that gets us, even if we don't know how it works on the inside.
Exactly. We don't need to map out someone's whole neural network to know if they're genuinely listening to us.
Right.
If they're making connections with what we're saying, there's something about the way we process information, the way our brains connect ideas, that just seems like it goes way beyond just crunching through a set of rules.
Right. It really does make you think, what if there's some other way our brains are doing this? Some elegant solution that we just haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
But okay, back to Penrose. Does he actually address this complexity issue head on?
He does, and it's actually in his later book, Shadows of the Mind, where things get super interesting, because he actually acknowledges that, a computer with a sufficiently large lookup table could technically simulate a human mathematician.
Wait, hold on. So he's kind of conceding that point.
He is, but, and this is important, he adds a very specific caveat.
Okay, there's always a caveat.
He argues that even if a computer could perfectly mimic the things a mathematician does, it wouldn't be a true simulation because it wouldn't involve genuine understanding.
So it's okay, maybe a computer could write a symphony that sounds exactly like Beethoven.
Right.
But it wouldn't understand the emotions behind it, the struggles, all that.
It wouldn't have lived that life, right?
Right, exactly.
It's literally the difference between replicating something and really getting it.
Yeah.
And this is where Penrose's argument, I think, starts to shift a little. He goes from saying computers can't simulate intelligence, point blank, to saying, well, they can't do it in a way that captures real understanding.
Okay, that's a really subtle difference.
It is.
And I can see how that would be super frustrating if you're a computer scientist like Aaronson.
Yeah.
Because, how do you prove or disprove whether something truly understands if we can't even agree on what understanding means, right?
It's a great question. And honestly, it's something philosophers have been arguing about for centuries, right?
Right.
And it's a question that's at the core of this whole debate about AI. But before we get, too deep into the philosophy weeds here, there's one final part of Penrose's argument that I think we have to talk about. We've got to bring in the quantum wildcard.
Oh, I knew we couldn't have a mind-bending physics conversation without talking about quantum entanglement. But how does quantum mechanics even play into all of this?
So remember that thought experiment we were talking about before?
The teleportation one.
Yes, the
Yeah.
teleportation one, where you get scanned, taken apart, and then boom, put back together
Yeah.
on Mars.
Yeah.
Quantum mechanics, and specifically this thing called the no-cloning theorem, throws a really interesting wrench into that whole scenario.
Okay, quantum teleportation, the no cloning theorem. This is where we really dive into the deep end, isn't it?
Yeah, we're getting down there, that's for sure. So imagine, right, you've got this particle in a particular quantum state.
Okay.
Now, what the no-cloning theorem says is you can't make a perfect copy of that state without messing with the original.
Hmm. So no duplicating a quantum state. You either got to move it or lose it, right?
Right.
But how does this have anything to do with our teleportation thought experiment?
Well, think about it. What if our consciousness, that sense of self we have, what if it relies even a little bit on quantum information, unique, uncopyable stuff?
Okay, yeah.
Suddenly, that teleportation thing gets really weird.
How so?
It wouldn't be a matter of the original you getting destroyed and a copy being made. Instead, just the act of scanning that quantum information would mean moving it. Your consciousness would shift locations, not get copied.
So not a copy at all.
Yeah.
More like moving a house brick by brick, right? You take the original apart as you rebuild it somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that's a completely different way of thinking about who we even are. But hold on, are we saying our brains are literally quantum computers now?
It's a question a lot of people have, and honestly, it's a big debate. Penrose himself, I don't think he's fully convinced the brain's a quantum computer like the way we usually picture it.
Okay.
He's more saying that even little quantum effects, maybe with single qubits doing their thing, that could have huge implications for how we understand consciousness.
Okay, so back up for a sec. Qubits, those are what quantum computers run on, right?
Yeah, like the basic unit of information.
And you're saying we might have actual qubits in our heads.
It's possible, and it's something researchers are looking into. I mean, think about it. Even one qubit following those weird rules of quantum mechanics, that could change stuff in the brain that would just seem random to us otherwise.
So what, like me deciding between coffee and tea this morning, that could be down to a quantum coin flip in my head.
Hey, you never know. It's a pretty wild thought, right? And it really makes you question all this stuff about free will. What does it even mean for something to be a choice if these tiny quantum events are swaying things?
Man, it really makes you wonder about reality, doesn't it? But here's the thing, and I find this really exciting. You said researchers are actually looking into this, right?
Yeah.
So could we one day actually test this? See if there's really a quantum show going on in our skulls?
That would be incredible, right?
It would.
Imagine being able to catch those subtle quantum events and see how they line up with what we're thinking, our decisions, even our sense of self.
That would change everything.
It'd be huge. It'd change how we understand consciousness completely.
It'd be like cracking the code of what makes us human. We started this deep dive talking about teleportation, and now here we are facing one of the biggest mysteries out there.
It's a trip, isn't it?
It really is. We went from, like, math to quantum weirdness,
Yeah.
all to try to figure out this whole consciousness thing.
It's amazing, and that's what I think is so great about Penrose's work. Even if you don't agree with his conclusions, and trust me, there are plenty of people who don't, he forces us to really confront what we don't know.
Yeah.
He makes us ask, what if we've only just scratched the surface of what our brains can really do?
It's both humbling and kind of terrifying, isn't it?
It really is.
It reminds us that the most amazing discoveries, they often happen in those spaces where different fields overlap. And who knows, maybe someday, because of thinkers like Penrose, we'll finally get it, We'll finally understand consciousness and what it means to be human.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, until then, keep asking the big questions, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.